Today's practical exam. Design and construct a weapon suitable for hostile environment combat. You have 2 hours. Professor Zixnall announced this with the gravitas of someone declaring war. He was crystalline, literally made of sentient geometric formations that refracted light when he moved. Very serious, very academic, very not prepared for what was about to happen. The classroom erupted. 39 alien cadets bolted for the door, rushing toward the fabrication labs with their 3D printers, molecular assemblers, and whatever other high-tech nonsense the Galactic Military Academy considered essential equipment. Corporal Blake Hoffman stayed in his seat. Mid-20s, former Army Reserves, current exchange student who was beginning to regret every life choice that had led to this moment. He looked around the now empty classroom, looked at the assignment parameters on his datapad, looked back at the empty room. Cadet Hoffman. Professor Zixnall's voice had that crystalline resonance that made it sound like he was speaking through a very expensive wind chime. Why aren't you in the fabrication lab? Blake stood up. Do I need to be? You need advanced tools to create a weapon suitable for... Blake walked over to one of the classroom chairs. Standard issue. Metal legs. Plastic seat. The kind of furniture that existed in every educational institution across the galaxy because someone, somewhere, had accepted the lowest bid. He grabbed one of the legs, yanked. The leg came off with a satisfying crack of breaking welds. Blake held it up. Done. Silence. Professor Zixnall's crystalline structure flickered, which Blake was learning meant the alien equivalent of buffering. You broke the furniture. I repurposed the furniture, Blake corrected. There's a difference. But that's just a piece of wood. Metal, actually. But close enough. Blake hefted the chair leg, testing its weight. About 3 feet long. Good weight distribution. Tapers to a point. Could sharpen it if you want. But honestly, this'll do. That's not... You can't just... This is an advanced weapons design course. And I just designed a weapon. Advanced is subjective. Using what methodology? Desperation, mostly. Also common sense. Professor Zixnall's form was flickering faster now. Cadet Hoffman, the assignment requires... The door burst open. Students flooded back in, carrying their projects. Energy projectors that hummed with barely contained power. Plasma rifles with targeting systems that could track a fly at 500 meters. Nanite swarms contained in specialized deployment units. One student, a Quillix, female, tentacled, looked like a very anxious octopus, carried what appeared to be a miniature black hole generator. They saw Blake, saw the stick in his hand. The room went quiet. What? The Quillix said slowly. Is that? Spear, Blake said. That's not a weapon. That's debris. It's a weapon if I stab you with it. That's... You can't be serious. Blake pointed the stick at her. She recoiled. 3 other students backed away. See? Blake said. Already working. Professor Zixnall's structure was now strobing like a disco ball having an existential crisis. This is unacceptable. The assignment required advanced weaponry suitable for hostile environment combat. You said design and construct a weapon, Blake quoted. Didn't specify advanced. Didn't specify complexity. Just said weapon. This is a weapon. Humanity's been using these for like 400,000 years. They work. They cannot possibly be as effective as... Wanna bet? That was a mistake. Professor Zixnall's pride as an educator was now at stake. He pulled up the holographic combat simulator, standard academy equipment for weapons testing. Very well. We'll test your... weapon against regulation training dummies. Combat Scenario 12. Hostile environment, multiple attackers, limited visibility. The other students set up their weapons on the testing platform. Sophisticated, computerized, energy efficient. Each one cost more than Blake's entire education. Blake's turn. He walked into the holographic environment holding his chair leg. The simulation loaded. Dark corridor, multiple hostiles, threat assessment protocols running. Blake moved. Not fancy, not flashy, just efficient. First, hostile materialized. Blake thrust the chair leg through its center mass. Hologram dissolved. Second hostile, coming from the side. Blake pivoted, struck it across what would have been a knee joint. Down. Third and fourth together. Blake used the spear's length, keeping them at distance, picking them off with precise strikes. He wasn't fighting like a soldier. He was fighting like someone who'd done this before in a completely different context. Bar fights. Maybe some rougher neighborhoods. Definitely someone who understood that weapon was less about sophistication and more about willingness to use it. The simulation enemies kept coming. Blake kept moving. Thrust, parry, strike, use the environment, duck behind cover, come out swinging. It was brutal. It was simple. It was effective. 90 seconds later, the simulation ended. Hostile count, 0. Blake's hits taken, 0. He stepped out of the simulator, not even breathing hard, and handed the chair leg back to Professor Zixnall. So, do I pass? The professor took the chair leg like it was radioactive, examined it from every angle. His crystalline structure flickered through colors Blake didn't have names for. How did you... This shouldn't work. The calculations don't support this level of efficiency. The weapon has no power source, no targeting system, no... What calculations? Blake asked. It's a stick. But the threat assessment protocol should have... It's a stick. You defeated 12 hostile projections with... a stick. Professor Zixnall's structure went completely transparent, which Blake was pretty sure meant a system crash. The Quillic student who'd questioned him earlier tentatively raised a tentacle. Professor, are you... functioning? No response. Another student, reptilian, male, very concerned, pulled out a communicator. I'm calling medical. Also call the dean, someone else added. And the Department of Xenoanthropology, a third student said. Blake just stood there, arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold. A senior student, avian, female, looked like someone had taught a parrot advanced physics, turned to him. What did you do? Homework, Blake said. You broke our professor. He asked me to demonstrate. I demonstrated. With a chair leg. Would you prefer I use the whole chair? Because I can go get the rest of it. Every student in the room took a step back. Medical arrived first. Then the dean. Then what looked like half the academy's administrative staff. The dean, insectoid, female, antennae quivering with stress, took one look at the situation. At the catatonic professor. At the chair leg in the evidence container someone had hastily produced. At Blake, who was filling out his post-exercise report like this was completely normal. Somebody, the dean said slowly, explain to me why Professor Zixnall is offline and why there's furniture in a biohazard container. The Quillic student spoke up. The human made a weapon out of classroom furniture and defeated Combat Scenario 12 in 90 seconds using primitive combat techniques that shouldn't work according to any known tactical doctrine. He made a what out of where? Blake raised his hand. If it helps, I can pay for the chair. Pay for the... The dean's antennae were now vibrating so fast they were blurring. Cadet Hoffman, do you understand what you've done? Homework? You've created an incident. I submitted an assignment. You traumatized a professor. He asked me to test my weapon. I tested my weapon. It's a piece of furniture. Blake looked at the chair leg, now sealed in its high-security container like it was alien technology from a prohibited zone. You guys put a chair leg in containment? It's a primitive weapon that defeated our advanced combat simulation. It's a stick! The dean pulled up her datapad, already showing alerts from 3 different departments requesting to study the human artifact. Cadet Hoffman, you are to report to my office first thing tomorrow morning. This device will be retained for analysis. And someone get Professor Zixnall to systems maintenance. Systems maintenance? Blake asked. He's a person, not a... He's crystalline-based. Systems maintenance is our version of medical. Oh. The dean left, trailing administrators who were already arguing about proper containment protocols for human-made weapons. The other students stared at Blake. Blake stared back. Finally, the Quillic spoke. You're going to fail. Probably, Blake agreed. They're going to expel you. Maybe. Was it worth it? Blake thought about the 2 hours his classmates had spent in fabrication labs, using equipment he didn't understand, following protocols he hadn't learned. Thought about the 30 seconds it took him to break a chair and call it a weapon. Ask me after I see my grade. The simulation scores posted that night. Cadet Hoffman, 100%. Additional notes. Unconventional methodology, disturbingly effective. Recommends psychological evaluation and furniture restriction. Blake read the assessment twice. Sent a message to his family back on Earth. Broke a chair. Made the dean's list. Might be banned from IKEA. His mom's response. That's my boy. His dad. What did you break the chair with? My hands. Damn. Should have used a tool. Blake laughed, put his datapad away, and went to bed. Tomorrow he had a meeting with the dean. And possibly Galactic Command, based on the 8 urgent messages from departments he'd never heard of. All because he'd improvised a weapon out of furniture. Space was weird. Dean Kreth's office was designed to intimidate. It worked on most species. High ceilings. Impressive view of the academy grounds. Awards covering every wall. The dean herself, insectoid, female, mandibles that clicked when she was displeased. Sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Blake's car. Blake sat across from her, decidedly unintimidated. Mostly because he'd spent the last 6 hours answering the same questions from different departments and was running on spite and vending machine food. Cadet Hoffman, Dean Kreth began, you've created an incident. I submitted homework. You traumatized a professor. I made a spear. You broke academy property and fashioned it into a primitive weapon that somehow... She pulled up data on her screen. Achieved a 100% combat efficiency rating. So I get an A? Her mandibles clicked. Rapidly. This is not about your grade. She pressed a button. A panel in the wall slid open, revealing the chair leg and its sealed containment unit. Still labeled, Human Artifact. Handle with caution. Blake stared at it. You put a chair leg in containment? It's a primitive weapon that defeated our most advanced combat simulations, Dean Kreth said. It's a stick. It's being studied by 3 departments: military tactics, xenoanthropology, and materials science. Materials science? It's made of metal. That's the whole study. Metal. Done. Dean Kreth pulled up her datapad, scrolled through what looked like dozens of documents. Research papers are already being written. Let me read you some titles. She cleared her throat. Improvised weaponry, the human tactical advantage. Blake winced. Tool adaptation in high-stress scenarios, a case study in human resourcefulness. Oh no. Why furniture is never safe around humans. Okay, that one's fair. Cadet Hoffman, do you understand the implications of what you've done? I turned in an assignment. You've demonstrated that humans can weaponize everyday objects with minimal effort and maximum efficiency. This has raised concerns. About furniture? About humans? Blake leaned back in his chair. The chair, which was probably now at risk. So, what happens now? Now, Dean Kreth said, mandibles still clicking. You're going to give a presentation. 3 days later, Blake stood in front of a packed lecture hall. His entire class was there, plus military observers from at least 6 species, plus representatives from departments he'd never heard of, all because he'd broken a chair. So, Blake said, surveying the crowd, you want to know about human weapons. He'd brought a cardboard box, set it on the desk, started pulling out items. Rolled up magazine. He held it up. Weapon. Aliens leaned forward, taking notes. Pen. He clicked it. Several students flinched. Weapon. Belt. He pulled it from the box. Weapon. Beverage container. He held up a thermos, definitely not containing prohibited substances. Weapon. A tentacle shot up. The Quillic student from his weapons class. How, she asked slowly, is a beverage container a weapon? You can hit someone with it, therefore weapon. Humans figured this out approximately 5 minutes after inventing containers. Everything's a weapon if you're motivated enough. A military observer, male, armored quadruped, looked like a tank with anxiety, stood up. This is concerning. Why? Blake asked. You literally asked me to explain this. We expected advanced tactical theory, strategic analysis, weapon development protocols. This is advanced tactical theory. Blake picked up the thermos again. Rule 1. Adapt. Rule 2. Survive. Rule 3. If it's not nailed down, it's a weapon. Rule 4. If it is nailed down, pry it loose, and then it's a weapon. The Observer's translator struggled with that. Are you saying humans can weaponize anything? Have you met humans? We weaponized pointed sticks 400,000 years ago and haven't stopped since. We're very creative when threatened. Or bored. Mostly bored. More frantic note-taking. An avian student raised a wing. But what about species that don't have your creative violence? Then they're probably better people than us, Blake said. But they're also the ones who asked me to give this presentation, so maybe reevaluate your life choices. The presentation ended with a Q&A session that felt more like a therapy session for traumatized aliens. The military observer approached afterward. Cadet Hoffman, your demonstration was enlightening. Terrifying? That too. We'd like to test these capabilities further. Test how? Hostile environment training, survival scenarios. See if this improvisation skill is consistent or if it was a fluke. Blake considered this. Do I get extra credit? You get to not fail. That's not the same thing. Take it or leave it. The hostile environment training facility was basically an obstacle course designed by people who hated joy. Rough terrain, limited resources, simulated threats. Students showed up in full gear, armor, weapons, survival. Packs that probably cost more than Blake's education. Blake showed up in gym clothes and running shoes. The instructor, a reptilian male with too many teeth and not enough patience, stared at him. Where's your equipment? I'm wearing it. You need armor, weapons, survival gear. I need comfortable shoes and a good attitude. I'll make the rest up as I go. That's not... You can't just... Watch me. The course began. Other students deployed their high-tech equipment, following protocols they'd memorized, using gear that would make Earth's military jealous. Blake picked up a rock, found a sturdy branch, used his shoelace to fashion a crude sling. The observers watched in fascinated horror. What is he doing? One whispered. I believe, another responded, he's crafting weapons from environmental materials. But he has no tools. He is the tool. By hour 2, Blake had created a shelter using branches and his jacket. Fashioned 11 improvised weapons, the observers counted, started a fire using friction and dried grass, built a trap that would have caught dinner if this had been real, all while other students were struggling with their equipment malfunctions and gear weight. At the debrief, the military observer looked at Dean Kreth. This isn't just tool use. This is tactical adaptation at a level we've never documented. What do you recommend? Immediately classify all human improvisation capabilities. And for the love of the cosmos, don't let them near construction equipment. Behind them, Blake was showing the Quillic student how to turn a backpack into a flail. She looked terrified. He looked bored. Just swing it like that, but with more commitment. This violates several safety protocols. So does getting attacked. You work with what you have. The observer turned back to the dean. Also, maybe restrict his teaching privileges. Too late, Dean Kreth said, pulling up her schedule. He's already been requested for 6 more demonstrations. By whom? Everyone. Tactical studies wants him. Survival training wants him. Even the philosophy department wants him to discuss human perspectives on violence and creation. That's not philosophy. That's a war crime. Tell that to the humans. Blake finished his lesson with the Quillics, whose name he'd learned was Kixara, and headed toward the exit. A junior instructor stopped him. Cadet Hoffman, you're scheduled for another evaluation tomorrow. What kind? Urban combat scenario, multiple hostiles, limited ammunition. Blake thought about this. Can I bring a chair? What? Nothing. I'll improvise. He walked away, leaving behind a training facility full of observers who were rapidly realizing that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was the refusal to accept that anything wasn't a weapon. Later that night, Blake found 17 messages on his datapad, 3 from departments requesting meetings, 5 from students asking for private lessons in improvisation, 6 from military brass wanting to discuss implications, and 3 from his family asking how school was going. He responded to his family first. Broke another chair, made it weird. They're calling it tactical innovation. His dad, stop breaking chairs. His mom, ignore your father. Break what you need to break. His sister, are you starting a fight club? No, but I'm apparently starting a weapons program based on breaking stuff. That's worse. Yeah, I'm aware. Blake fell asleep wondering what tomorrow's urban combat scenario would bring, and whether the Academy's furniture budget could survive his education. Military Intelligence Conference Room 12 was not designed for comedy. It was designed for serious discussions about serious threats, which is why the current meeting felt so absurd. Let me make sure I understand correctly. The intelligence officer, some kind of floating jellyfish in a containment suit, reviewed his datapad. Cadet Hoffman has been at the Academy for 3 weeks. In that time, he has weaponized 1 chair leg, multiple rocks, several sticks, rope from the gym, his own jacket, a food tray, and someone else's drop stylus. 14 objects, another officer confirmed, that we know of. Is this normal for humans? The conference room's holographic display activated, showing an Earth military consultant joining remotely. Colonel Winters, female. Deadpan expression that suggested she'd seen too much and found most of it boring. Yes, she said. We call it making do. It's a survival skill. But he seems to weaponize things automatically, without conscious thought. Have you met humans? Winters asked. We're very creative when threatened. Or bored. Mostly bored. She pulled up footage from Earth. Television clips. Movies. Survival shows. A man making a bomb from household items. Another person fashioning a grappling hook from climbing gear. Someone building a functional crossbow in a hardware store. This is MacGyver, Winters explained. He's fictional, but represents a cultural ideal. Humans consider improvisation a valuable skill. The aliens watched in growing horror. Your species does this recreationally? We think it's fun. Makes good television. There are entire shows dedicated to what would you do with limited resources? Survivor. Man versus Wild. That one where the guy eats bugs. Why would anyone eat bugs? Protein, Winters said. Also, entertainment value. The intelligence officers exchanged looks that transcended species barriers. Universal expressions of, what have we gotten ourselves into? Colonel Winters, the jellyfish officer said carefully. How do we contain this? You don't. That's the point. Humans adapt. It's what we do. But the security implications are your problem now. Good luck. She disconnected. The officers sat in silence. Finally, one spoke. We need to test this. Formally. Test how? Controlled environment. Blake Hoffman versus trained. Military unit. See if this improvisation capability is consistent, or if he's an outlier. They were about to learn that Blake was absolutely not an outlier. He was just the first one they'd noticed. The exercise parameters were simple. Blake versus a 6-person military unit. Full combat gear, advanced weapons, years of training. Blake got an empty room and 30 minutes of prep time. This seems unfair, Kixara the Quillix said from the observation deck. To whom? Someone asked. The military unit. They thought she was joking. She wasn't. Blake stood in the empty room, surveyed his resources. Desk, chairs, light fixtures, ceiling tiles, air vents, door hinges. 30 minutes. He got to work. The observers watched through reinforced glass. What's he doing? Dean Kreth asked. I believe, a tactical analyst responded. He's removing ceiling tiles to create false floors, and dismantling the desk legs for... Are those stakes? Primitive fortification tactics, another analyst confirmed. Using furniture legs to create defensive barriers and… Is he removing the door? Blake had, in fact, removed the door. Was now using the hinges as improvised caltrops near the entrance. 20 minutes left. He fashioned weapons from chair legs, of course. Created a crude sling from his belt. Set up a tripwire using cables from the dismantled desk. 10 minutes left. He built what could only be described as a trap network. Pressure points, false floors, advantageous positions. Time's up. The military unit entered, expecting to find one unarmed human in an empty room. What they found was a tactical nightmare. First soldier triggered the tripwire. Down. Second soldier stepped on the improvised caltrops. Also down. Third soldier made it 3 steps before Blake dropped from a ceiling panel, where he'd been hiding, and disarmed him with a chair leg to the back. The remaining 3 tried to coordinate. Blake used the environment, ducked behind his fortifications, threw improvised projectiles, taunted them. Is that supposed to be covering fire? My grandmother shoots better. Stand still, one soldier shouted. That's not how this works, Blake called back, already moving to a different position. 12 minutes later, the exercise ended. Military unit completely neutralized. Blake, not a scratch. He walked out of the room, handed his improvised weapons to the instructor and asked, "Same time next week?" The post-exercise debrief was tense. The unit commander, male, some kind of armored crustacean, looked deeply shaken. Faced Blake across a table. "How did you train for this?" "I didn't," Blake said. "I just used what was there." But the tactical awareness, the environmental exploitation, the psychological warfare? Where did you learn this? Blake thought about it. Home Depot, probably. Also, one time I had to build a fort with my nephew using only couch cushions. This was easier. You're comparing military combat to children's play? Kid was 7, and took it very seriously. Learned a lot about defensive structures that day. The commander looked at his superior officers. I have no idea how to process this. None of us do, Dean Kreth said. Within 48 hours, Galactic Military Command issued new protocols. Human Interaction Guidelines. Blake read it in the dean's office. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. It's necessary, Dean Kreth insisted. You've demonstrated that humans can weaponize anything. Blake flipped through the document. 40 pages. Single-spaced. I used a chair leg. 1 chair leg. This is 40 pages. Page 12 addresses furniture. Page 23 specifically discusses human capacity to fashion cutting implements from writing utensils. Blake pulled a pen from his pocket, clicked it thoughtfully. Every alien in the room backed away. What? Blake asked. We know what you're capable of. It's a pen. That's what you want us to think. Blake very slowly set the pen on the desk. Dean Kreth's antennae were vibrating at concerning frequencies. Cadet Hoffman, these guidelines are for everyone's safety. Humans will now be supervised at all times. Access to tools will be restricted. Furniture will be reinforced. We're even implementing a buddy system to prevent unsupervised improvisation. You're treating us like weapons. You are weapons. You just demonstrated that. I demonstrated that I can problem solve under pressure. That's different. Not to our security analysts, it isn't. Someone knocked on the door. Dean Kreth's assistant, a nervous avian male, poked his head in. Dean, the new human exchange student has arrived. Already? That's not until… A woman walked in. Human. Female. Late 20s. Military bearing. Casual confidence that suggested she'd seen some things and wasn't impressed. Corporal Ashley Briggs, according to her uniform. She looked at Blake, looked at the broken chair in the corner that still hadn't been removed, looked back at Blake. You did the chair leg thing? Yeah, Blake said. Nice. I used a mop handle. Blake grinned. Solid choice. Had better reach. Plus the mop head makes a decent distraction. I didn't even think of keeping the mop head. Amateur hour, Ashley said, but she was smiling. Dean Kreth's antennae drooped, the universal gesture of despair. There are more of you? About 8 billion last count, Ashley said. Why? Because this one, Dean Kreth gestured at Blake, has spent 3 weeks terrorizing my academy with improvised weapons and tactical creativity we can't classify. Oh. Ashley looked at Blake with new respect. You made them write protocols? 40 pages. Damn. I only got to 18 before they kicked me out of basic. What did you do? Turned a mess hall into a fortified position using only cafeteria trays and condiment packets. Blake whistled appreciatively. That's impressive. Thanks. They called it concerning disregard for institutional, property, and safety norms. I got revolutionary tactical innovation. Show off. Dean Kreth stood. Both of you, out. I need to revise the human interaction guidelines. To how many pages? Blake asked. I don't know. How many of you are coming? Ashley checked her datapad. Just me this semester, but I think there are 3 more next term. 3 more? Earth's really excited about the exchange program. Apparently we're providing valuable cross-cultural learning opportunities. Blake snorted. Is that what we're calling it? Better than accidentally starting a security crisis. That's fair. They left the office together. Behind them, Dean Kreth was already calling emergency meetings. In the hallway, Ashley elbowed Blake. So, what's the Academy's stance on joint presentations? Terrified, mostly. Perfect. Want to teach these aliens about team tactics? Blake thought about the 40-page protocol document, about the professors who now flinched when he picked up pens, about the fact that furniture had been reinforced throughout the academy. Yeah, he said. Let's make it worse. Ashley grinned. I like your style. Somewhere in military intelligence, alarms were already going off. Not literal alarms. The metaphorical kind that meant someone, somewhere, had made a terrible mistake. And that mistake was letting 2 humans meet unsupervised, with access to furniture. Human tactical studies became a mandatory course, the galaxy's worst administrative decision. Blake and Ashley co-taught, which meant the Academy now had 2 humans unsupervised in front of impressionable alien cadets. Today, Blake announced, we're discussing how to survive with limited resources. Also known as Tuesday, Ashley added. They'd brought props, classroom materials, normal, everyday objects. 40 alien students watched nervously. Let's start with basics, Blake said. You're in hostile territory, no weapons, no gear. What do? A Relaxi student, reptilian, male, very serious, raised a claw. But what if you don't have a chair leg? Then you use something else. Like what? Ashley walked over, picked up a datapad from a student's desk. This. That's a computing device. It's also blunt, heavy, and has sharp corners. Triple threat. Military observers in the back frantically updated threat assessments. The course continued. Blake demonstrated improvised weapons. Ashley showed environmental exploitation. Together, they taught aliens to think like humans. Most aliens found this deeply traumatizing. Final exam. Survive a scenario using human methodology. Minimal equipment, maximum improvisation. Results were mixed, 35 failures. Most cadets panicked immediately when deprived of their advanced gear. 2 mental breakdowns. Had to be sedated. 1 success. Kixara, the Quillix who'd first questioned Blake's chair-leg spear. She'd learned. Used her environment. Fashioned crude tools. Thought creatively. Passed with honors. See? Blake said afterward. You can do this. But I had to think like a human, Kixara said, exhausted. It's exhausting. Yeah, Ashley agreed. Welcome to our species. We're tired too. Dean Kreth reviewed the results, antennae drooping. Perhaps human methods aren't suitable for other species. Or maybe, Blake said, you're overthinking it. Graduation day arrived. Blake somehow graduated with honors despite, or perhaps because of, breaking 17 chairs over the semester. He also became a certified instructor in adaptive combat tactics. The dean's speech. Cadet Hoffman has taught us valuable lessons about resourcefulness, creativity, and why we need better furniture. Blake received a medal. Revolutionary tactical innovation. Also received a bill. For all the chairs. Seriously? He asked. Academy property must be paid for. Blake reached into his bag, pulled out a stick, handed it to the dean. What is this? Payment. It's a weapon now, worth at least 15 chairs by your standards. The dean stared at the stick. Couldn't argue with that logic. Ashley whispered, brutal. I learned from the best, Blake said. Who? Every broke college student ever. 6 months after graduation, human tactical improvisation became required reading at every Galactic Military Academy. Blake and Ashley were listed as co-authors. They hadn't written it, just lived their lives while aliens took frantic notes. The manual included chapters: furniture as weaponry, environmental exploitation, psychological warfare through casualness. Blake and Ashley now taught regularly at the academy. Guest instructors, highly paid, new class, new students. One raised a tentacle. How do humans stay so calm in combat? We're not calm, Blake said. We're just used to worse. Worse than combat? Ever moved apartments without a truck? Ashley asked. Blank stares. You will, Blake said. Eventually. In a military command center light years away, two generals discussed human integration. They've revolutionized tactical doctrine. They broke furniture and called it innovation. Should we recruit more humans? Let's start with restricting their access to hardware stores first. Across the galaxy, military academies quietly reinforced all their chairs. On Earth, a recruitment officer interviewed Blake about his experience. So, you impressed them? I broke a chair. And? That was it. That was the impressive part. Humanity's going places. Blake looked at his medal for revolutionary tactical innovation. Then, at the bill for 15 broken chairs that he'd technically paid with a stick. Yeah, he said. Probably jail. The officer laughed. Welcome to Earth's Galactic Reputation Management Program, where breaking furniture makes you a weapons expert. Is that what we're calling it? Better than accidentally terrifying the galaxy through normal behavior. Fair point. Blake left the recruitment office, medal in one pocket, unpaid chair bill in the other. Behind him, the galaxy was rewriting tactical manuals, all because one human had improvised with furniture. Space, Blake decided, was weird. But at least the chairs were reinforced now.